Welcome to this next class. Today I'm going to talk about another very important topic in English 3, that is 7 C's of effective communication. These are basically 7 aspects which make communication effective and successful. And since these 7 words or 7 terms start with the alphabet C, they are called 7 C's. And these are courtesy, clarity, conciseness, concreteness, correctness, consideration, and completion. So I'll be discussing all these 7 C's in detail. First of all, let's talk about courtesy. Now, courtesy is actually a reference to the speaker's attitude towards the audience, how he should behave with them. And if he develops a kind of sincere, wise, and affectionate relationship with the listeners, it contributes to make your communication effective. Now, this is important because the feelings and sensibilities of your audience are very important. If you ignore them, it is impossible to convey your ideas to them. And this is the most important thing in communication, that you should know the techniques and strategies to make your communication effective and successful. So this goal cannot be achieved unless you respect your audience. And by this respect, we mean the kind of treatment you give them, the kind of behavior you have with them. Now, in courtesy and consideration of your audience, you must bear in mind their cultural background and their religious beliefs, because these two things are very sensitive in the eyes of the people. So if you unconsciously, unintentionally say something that hurts their sensibilities by targeting or talking inappropriately about some of their cultural practices or their religious beliefs and practices or personalities, the audience are going to be enraged, and instead of listening to you, they'll certainly be angry and annoyed. And a good speaker is not someone who offends his audience, rather he gains their attention very tactfully and makes this process of communication effective. The next point is clarity. Your communication must possess clarity. Now, clarity can be achieved in communication in various ways. First thing is, your ideas, your discussion, your presentation should be easily understandable for the listeners. You should try to make your ideas as accessible, as easily understandable as possible. Now, the first thing that is the responsibility of the speaker is to prepare the discussion very well, because clarity in expression cannot be possible unless the speaker is quite sure of the ideas that he is discussing. If you have sound comprehension, sound grasp on the subject that you are dealing with, it becomes very easy to talk about this topic in a way that helps the audience understand those ideas better. Similarly, during the discussion, you must be conscious of the language that you are using, because sometimes it so happens that the idea that you have in mind is not reflected in your language. So this wrong choice of words can lead to misunderstanding in the mind of your audience. So what you need to do is choose your words wisely and carefully. If there is no ambiguity in your language, there will be no confusion in the mind of your audience. So in clarity, what you need to understand is the speaker is supposed to do a lot of homework before he appears on stage for this presentation. So if he wants to make a good impression on the audience, he should come well prepared. See, all these ideas that I have just talked about in terms of developing clarity in communication belong to the speaker. Moreover, when it comes to discussion of these ideas, the speaker should try to organize his ideas in a convincing, logical way. Since the discussion involves a lot of things, what he should do is he should outline them and then discuss one thing at a time. This discussion of one idea at a time makes the reader understand the idea easily, instead of talking randomly about the topic and saying anything that occurs to the speaker. If he has good plan and he has organized his ideas in a logical, hierarchical way, it makes discussion and communication more easy for the listeners. So he should try to divide the topic into subheadings, subpoints, because there is a lot of information that he wants to share with the audience. This cannot be possible unless you divide it into different sections and then different subpoints. For example, you can see here that instead of talking about 7 C's of communication just generally, I have outlined them and then I'm discussing them one by one in detail. Now this gradual discussion allows the audience to ask their questions and share their confusions whenever they find something difficult to understand. Similarly, for the sake of clarity, the speaker should try to offer examples to explain his ideas, or show the readers images or maps depending on the kind of idea he is discussing. So a speaker should be conscious of the techniques and equipments required for effective communication. So he should have everything at his disposal that is required to make this communication process with his audience effective and successful. Now let's move on to the third aspect of effective communication, and that is conciseness. Now conciseness simply means being to the point and brief, and this conciseness relates to economy of words in accordance with the simplicity or complexity of an idea. There is no single hard and fast formula to be applied on every situation. It depends on the kind of idea you are discussing. How many words will be enough, sufficient to convey your idea, is something that depends on the understanding of the speaker. He should talk about a simple idea briefly and a complex idea in detail. This is quite logical, because a simple idea can be understood easily. It does not need a lot of details or examples, because it is commonsensical and everybody can understand it just with one mention. On the other hand, if the idea is complex and it needs more explanation, examples, this is what the speaker can think about. But the idea is, whether it be a simple idea or a complex idea that he wants to convey to his audience, he should choose as less words as possible. And by less words, I do not mean to leave the idea confusing or ambiguous. It actually means that you should only use a number of words which is required for the communication of that idea. A simple idea should not be stressed upon unnecessarily. So if you simply add more and more words while the idea is already clear, being simple, it means you are wasting the time of your audience. So what you need to do is distinguish between simple and complex ideas. Spend less time on simple ones and more time on complex ones. That would be a wise choice. So you must avoid unnecessary details. And another benefit of being concise is that brief messages remain in the mind and memory of the audience or the people listening for a longer stretch of time. But if you stuff your expression with more and more unnecessary details, the main point will be lost. So instead of confusing your audience, be brief and to the point. And thirdly, this is a very important idea that sometimes the speakers ignore, and this harms their presentation and its effectiveness to a great extent, and that is the idea of attention span of listeners. Attention span basically means how long a person can maintain his attention to a person's discussion. And usually it is said that the longest attention span of human beings is normally 20 minutes. So if you stretch your discussion unnecessarily, talking about this thing and that without focusing on the main key points, what you are going to do is you will be losing the focus and attention of your listeners. They will be distracted because after some time they will not be able to maintain their concentration on your discussion. They will be thinking about different things, and this is something quite natural. So you must try to hold their attention as long as possible through different techniques by engaging them to listen to you carefully. And one thing that I have just suggested here is to be concise in your discussion. Do not talk about unnecessary things. Just be focused on main things, main ideas, so that your original message or idea is easily understood and retained by the listeners. This is enough for today's discussion. I'll continue with 7 C's of communication in my upcoming discussions. Thank you very much.